The pregnancy test in Elena Cross's trembling hands showed 2 pink lines, but the medical records on her husband's desk proved he'd had a vasectomy 3 years ago. Her breath caught in her throat as the implications crashed over her like ice water. Vincent had been telling her for months that they should keep trying for a baby, watching her take fertility medications that made her sick, scheduling appointment after appointment with specialists who ran test after test on her body. All while knowing it was impossible. All while knowing he'd made sure it was impossible. The sound of his Mercedes pulling into their driveway sent panic shooting through her nervous system. Elena shoved the medical papers back exactly where she'd found them, her fingers shaking so badly she nearly dropped the pregnancy test. She slipped it into her pocket just as Vincent's key turned in the lock. "Elena, where are you, sweetheart?" His voice carried that familiar tone of manufactured affection he used when other people might be listening. The housekeeper was still here. "In your office, honey," she called back, proud that her voice came out steady. "Just watering your plants." 3 years of marriage to Vincent Cross had taught Elena to become an expert actress. The world saw a devoted wife supporting her brilliant husband's meteoric rise from struggling entrepreneur to tech industry titan. What they didn't see were the small cruelties, the casual dismissals, the way he spoke to her when no cameras were rolling. Vincent appeared in the doorway, his 6-foot frame filling the space. At 38, he still turned heads wherever he went. Success looked good on him, even if Elena now understood the true cost of that success. "How was your appointment with Dr. Morrison?" he asked, loosening his tie. "Any good news?" The pregnancy test felt like it was burning a hole in her pocket. Elena forced her lips into the hopeful smile he expected. "Not this month. But she wants to run a few more tests." "Don't worry, baby. We'll keep trying." Vincent crossed to her and placed his hands on her shoulders. To anyone watching, it would look like a tender moment between devoted spouses. Elena felt his fingers dig in just hard enough to remind her who held the power. These things take time. Time. Elena almost laughed at the cosmic joke of it all. She'd been timing her life around his lies for 3 years. "I should start dinner," she said, stepping carefully out of his grasp. "Actually, I need to head back to the office. Board meeting prep." Vincent was already reaching for his jacket. "Don't wait up." Elena nodded like the understanding wife she'd trained herself to be. But as Vincent's footsteps faded down the hallway, her hand moved to her pocket where the pregnancy test waited. 2 pink lines that changed everything. "Welcome to a story about discovering that the person you trusted most has been systematically destroying your spirit, and what happens when that person finally pushes you too far." Vincent Cross believed his money could bury any sin, erase any betrayal, silence any truth that threatened his carefully constructed empire. He'd spent years underestimating the quiet woman who'd supported him through his darkest moments, who'd believed in him when nobody else would. He was about to learn the most expensive lesson of his life. Elena waited until she heard his car disappear down their tree-lined street before pulling out her phone. Her fingers hovered over Dr. Morrison's contact information. The same Dr. Morrison who'd been asking Elena increasingly pointed questions about her husband's medical history. The same Dr. Morrison who'd seemed surprised when Elena mentioned Vincent's enthusiasm for having children. The same Dr. Morrison who'd specifically requested that Vincent come in for his own fertility evaluation. Elena's thumb moved to press call, then stopped. Something held her back, some instinct that whispered this moment was bigger than a phone call. This moment was the first domino in a chain reaction that would either destroy her or set her free. She thought about the woman she'd been 4 years ago, working double shifts at a coffee shop to pay for night classes, dreaming of a future she could barely afford to imagine. She thought about the charming customer who'd started staying after closing time to help her clean up, who'd listened to her dreams and made her believe they were possible. That man had asked her to marry him with a ring he'd bought on a payment plan. The man who'd just lied to her face owned a company worth $200 million. Elena looked down at the pregnancy test in her palm. 2 pink lines that proved Vincent Cross wasn't the only one keeping secrets. She just hadn't known hers yet. Elena stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror, trying to reconcile the woman looking back at her with the girl who'd fallen in love 4 years ago. That girl had been scrappy, determined, working her way through community college with calloused hands and big dreams. This woman had manicured nails and a closet full of designer clothes she'd never chosen for herself. The pregnancy test sat on the marble countertop like an accusation. She pulled out her phone and scrolled to a contact she hadn't called in months. Maya Chun, her best friend from before Vincent, before the money, before everything changed. Maya had tried to stay close, but Elena's new life had requirements that didn't include late-night pizza runs or honest conversations about feelings. Elena? Maya's voice held surprise and something else. Concern. Everything okay? I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Elena kept her voice low, even though Vincent was gone. Old habits. That night 4 years ago, when you met Vincent at the coffee shop. Do you remember what you said about him? A pause. Elena, why are you asking about this now? Please. Just tell me. Maya's sigh carried through the phone. I said he seemed too good to be true. I said men who looked like that didn't usually hang around after closing time to help broke college girls clean up unless they wanted something. Elena closed her eyes. And what did I say? You said I was being cynical. You said he was different, that he saw something in you worth waiting for. Maya's voice grew gentler. Elena, what's happening? Talk to me. Before Elena could answer, she heard the front door open. Vincent, back already. Her pulse quickened. I have to go, she whispered. Elena, wait. She ended the call and slipped the phone into her pocket next to the pregnancy test. When she emerged from the bathroom, Vincent was in their bedroom, changing into jeans and a sweater. Casual clothes that made him look younger, more like the man she'd fallen in love with. Meeting got canceled, he said without looking at her. Thought we could grab dinner somewhere nice. You've been looking tired lately. There it was, wrapped in fake concern. The subtle criticism that would make her question herself for the rest of the evening. You've been looking tired. Not are you feeling okay? Or is there anything I can do? Just a gentle reminder that she wasn't measuring up to his standards. That sounds lovely, Elena said, because agreeing was always easier than the alternative. Vincent's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his expression shifted, became guarded. Actually, something's come up. Rain check. Elena watched him scroll through what looked like a string of messages, his thumb moving quickly across the screen. She caught a glimpse of a woman's name, Sophia, before he angled the phone away. Of course, she said. You're the best, baby. Vincent kissed her forehead, the gesture feeling more like a dismissal than affection. Order yourself something nice. Use the black card. After he left, Elena stood in their bedroom for a long moment, processing the familiar ache of being an afterthought in her own marriage. The black card comment stung particularly deep. Vincent loved reminding her that he controlled their finances, that her comfort depended entirely on his generosity. She thought about the woman she'd been before Vincent, the one who'd paid her own bills and made her own decisions. That woman had been broke, exhausted, and uncertain about the future. But she'd been hers. Elena pulled out her phone and called the one person in this house she could trust. Mrs. Cross. Carmen Vasquez had been their housekeeper for 2 years, but she'd become something closer to a friend. Carmen had worked for wealthy families long enough to recognize the signs of a marriage in trouble. Carmen, I know it's your day off, but could you come over? I need someone to talk to. 30 minutes later, Carmen sat across from Elena at the kitchen island, her weathered hands wrapped around a cup of coffee. At 55, Carmen had raised 4 children and survived 2 decades of marriage to a man who'd tried to control her every move. She recognized the look in Elena's eyes. How long have you known? Carmen asked gently. Known what? That your husband is not the man you married. Elena's composure cracked. The tears she'd been holding back for months finally spilled over. I found medical records today. Vincent had a vasectomy 3 years ago. We've been trying to have a baby for 8 months, and he's been watching me blame myself for not getting pregnant when he knew the whole time it was impossible. Carmen's face hardened. Mijo, what else have you found? I don't know what you mean. Yes, you do. Men like Mr. Cross, they don't usually stop at one lie. Carmen reached across the counter and took Elena's hand. What else? Elena thought about the late nights, the business trips that seemed to multiply each month, the way Vincent's phone was always face down when she was around. She thought about Sophia's name on his screen and how quickly he'd hidden it. There's someone else, she whispered. Isn't there? Carmen's silence was answer enough. How long have you known? Mrs. Cross, it's not my place to. Carmen, please. I'm asking you as a friend. Carmen looked at her hands. 6 months ago, I found a receipt in his jacket pocket when I was taking clothes to the cleaner. Dinner for 2 at Chez Laurent. The same night you told me he was working late. She met Elena's eyes. I've been cleaning up after powerful men my whole life. I know what their secrets look like. Elena felt something shift inside her chest, like a lock clicking open. Why didn't you tell me? Because I've also seen what happens to women who confront powerful men with the truth before they're ready to handle the consequences. Carmen squeezed her hand. But if you're asking now, maybe you're getting ready. Elena pulled the pregnancy test from her pocket and set it on the counter between them. Carmen's eyes widened. 2 pink lines, Elena said. Which should be impossible if my husband is telling the truth about anything. Carmen stared at the test, then at Elena, understanding dawning in her expression. Mijo, what are you going to do? For the first time in months, Elena felt something other than confusion and self-doubt. She felt clarity, sharp and cold and surprisingly steady. I'm going to find out who my husband really is, she said. And then I'm going to decide who I want to be. Carmen nodded slowly. Then you're going to need help. And you're going to need to be very, very careful. Elena thought about the woman who'd worked double shifts and paid her own bills and trusted her own judgment. That woman was still inside her somewhere, buried under 3 years of gaslighting and control. It was time to dig her up. Carmen, Elena said, tell me everything you know. Carmen's revelations came in careful doses over the next hour, each one hitting Elena like a physical blow. The dinner receipts from restaurants Elena had never been to. The jewelry store purchases that never made it home to her. The private investigator's business card Carmen had found tucked inside one of Vincent's books 6 months ago. A private investigator? Elena's voice cracked. What would Vincent need with a private investigator? Carmen's expression grew darker. Mrs. Cross, I think your husband has been having people watched. Maybe even you. Elena's blood went cold. She thought about the past year, how Vincent always seemed to know where she'd been, who she'd talked to. She'd assumed he was just attentive, maybe even possessive in a romantic way. Now those memories took on a sinister cast. There's more, Carmen said quietly. Last month, when you went to visit your sister in Portland, Mr. Cross had a woman here. In your house. In your bed. Elena gripped the edge of the counter. Her sister's text from that weekend flashed through her mind. You seemed so sad on the phone lately. I'm worried about you. Elena had dismissed it, convinced she was just tired from the fertility treatments that were apparently pointless. Carmen, I need you to help me with something, Elena said, her voice steadier than she felt. Vincent keeps files in his home office. Legal documents, business papers. I need to know what's in them. Mrs. Cross, if he finds out. He won't. He's meeting with his lawyer tomorrow morning at 9. He told me it was about expanding the business. Elena paused. But now I'm wondering what kind of expansion requires a lawyer who specializes in criminal defense. Carmen stared at her. How do you know what kind of lawyer he uses? Because I Googled him 6 months ago when Vincent first mentioned the meetings. I thought it was strange that a tech company CEO would need someone who usually represents people accused of fraud and embezzlement. For the first time since this conversation began, Carmen looked genuinely frightened. Mijo, what have you gotten yourself into? Elena's phone buzzed. A text from Vincent. Staying at the office tonight. Big presentation tomorrow. Love you. She showed Carmen the message. He's lying again. The office building has security cameras in the parking garage. If he was really there, I could verify it. You want to drive downtown and check? No. Elena stood up, feeling something click into place inside her chest. I want to call his assistant and ask if he needs anything for tomorrow's presentation. Elena dialed Vincent's office before she could lose her nerve. His assistant, Jennifer, picked up on the second ring. Cross Technologies, this is Jennifer. Hi Jennifer, it's Elena Cross. I wanted to check if Vincent needs anything for his big presentation tomorrow. He's been so stressed about it. A pause. Mrs. Cross, I'm sorry, but Mr. Cross doesn't have any presentations scheduled tomorrow. His calendar is completely clear until his lunch meeting with the board on Thursday. Elena's world tilted. Are you sure? He specifically mentioned a presentation. Absolutely sure. I manage his entire schedule. The only appointment he has tomorrow is personal. He blocked out the whole morning, but didn't tell me what for. I see. Thank you, Jennifer. I must have misunderstood. Elena hung up and looked at Carmen, who had gone pale. He lied about tomorrow too, Elena whispered. Carmen stood up and walked to the window, checking the driveway like she expected Vincent to materialize. Mrs. Cross, I think we're in over our heads here. If your husband is involved in something illegal, if he's having people watched, if he's lying about basic things like where he is and what he's doing, then I need to know the truth before I make any decisions about this pregnancy. The words hung in the air between them. Elena touched her stomach, still flat, still showing no signs of the life growing inside her. A life that Vincent would assume wasn't his, given his secret vasectomy. A life that would trap her even more thoroughly in whatever game he was playing. Carmen, tomorrow morning when he leaves for his mysterious appointment, I want you to help me search his office. Really search it. I need to understand what I'm dealing with before I decide what to do next. Carmen looked like she wanted to refuse, but something in Elena's expression stopped her. And if we find something terrible? Something that could destroy him? Elena thought about the woman she'd been 4 years ago, the one who'd believed in love and trust and building something beautiful together. That woman was gone, killed slowly by 3 years of subtle manipulation and outright lies. Then I'll decide if he deserves to be destroyed. Carmen nodded slowly. There's something else you should know. About the private investigator. Elena's stomach dropped. What about him? I saw him here once. Not following or watching. He came to the house when you were at your book club. He and Mr. Cross spent 2 hours in the office together. When he left, I found them in the kitchen shaking hands. Carmen met Elena's eyes. Mr. Cross gave him an envelope full of cash. A thick envelope. How thick? Thick enough to make a man do things he might not normally do. Elena's mind raced. Vincent was paying a private investigator in cash. Vincent was lying about his whereabouts. Vincent had been sterilized while encouraging her to blame herself for their inability to conceive. Vincent was having an affair and bringing the other woman into their home. But none of that answered the bigger question. What was Vincent Cross really capable of? Her phone rang. Unknown number. Hello, Mrs. Cross? This is Detective Sarah Park with the Portland Police Bureau. I'm calling about your sister, Rebecca. Elena's blood turned to ice. What about Rebecca? Is she okay? She's fine, ma'am. But she asked me to call you. She's been receiving some disturbing messages, and she mentioned that you might know something about why someone would be threatening her. Threatening her? Elena's voice came out as a whisper. Someone's been sending her photos of her house, her car, her workplace. Always with the same message. Tell your sister to stop asking questions. Detective Park paused. Mrs. Cross, what questions have you been asking? Elena looked at Carmen, who had gone white. Detective, I think I need to call you back. Mrs. Cross, if someone is threatening your sister because of something you're investigating, you need to tell me now. These things can escalate quickly. Elena hung up and stared at her phone. Vincent wasn't just lying to her. He was actively threatening her family to keep her in line. The pregnancy test on the counter seemed to mock her. 2 pink lines that represented either a new beginning or the final nail in her coffin. Carmen, Elena said quietly, change of plans. We're not waiting until tomorrow morning. What do you mean? Elena headed toward Vincent's office, determination replacing fear. I mean, we're searching that office tonight. And if we find what I think we're going to find, I'm calling Detective Park back. Carmen followed her down the hallway. And if Mr. Cross comes home? Elena paused at the office door, her hand on the handle. Then he's going to discover that the woman he's been underestimating for 3 years just declared war. She turned the handle and stepped into Vincent's private sanctuary, ready to uncover the truth that would either set her free or destroy them both. Vincent's office felt different in the lamplight, shadows stretching across walls lined with awards and photographs of him shaking hands with politicians and business leaders. Elena had been in this room hundreds of times, but tonight she saw it for what it really was, a shrine to a man she'd never actually known. Carmen closed the door behind them and immediately went to the windows, drawing the curtains tight. Where do we start? Elena's eyes went to the filing cabinet she'd never been allowed to touch. Vincent always said those files were boring business documents. But he locks it, and he's the only one with the key. Not the only one. Carmen pulled a small key from her pocket. I found this taped under his desk drawer when I was cleaning last month. I didn't know what it was for until now. Elena stared at her. You've been planning this? I've been watching a good woman slowly disappear, Mrs. Cross. Sometimes planning is just another word for hoping for the right moment to help. The filing cabinet opened with a soft click, revealing rows of manila folders labeled with dates and initials rather than names. Elena pulled out the first one, dated 3 months ago, and opened it. Her breath caught. Inside were photographs of her. Dozens of them. Elena at the grocery store, at her book club, having coffee with Maya. But also more invasive shots, Elena in their bedroom, changing clothes. Elena in the shower, taken through what must have been a camera hidden in their ensuite bathroom. Carmen, Elena whispered, He's been having me photographed in our own house. Carmen looked over her shoulder and cursed in Spanish. Mijo, this is not normal jealousy. This is something much worse. Elena grabbed another file. This one contained financial documents, but not for Cross Technologies. These were for shell companies she'd never heard of: Meridian Holdings, Blackstone Acquisitions, Apex Consulting. Each company showed massive cash transfers, all flowing back to accounts in Vincent's name. Money laundering, Elena breathed. He's been laundering money through fake companies. The third file made her legs weak. It contained detailed information about other women, including Sophia, the name she'd seen on Vincent's phone. But Sophia wasn't just his affair partner. According to these documents, she was a federal informant who'd been feeding information about Vincent's business dealings to the FBI. And Vincent knew. Elena's hands shook as she read the private investigator's report. Subject Sofia Martinez has been in regular contact with FBI agent David Reyes for the past 8 months. Recommend immediate action to neutralize threat. Carmen, we need to call the police right now. Mrs. Cross, look at this. Carmen had found another folder, this one with Elena's name on it. Inside was a life insurance policy Elena had never seen before, taken out 6 months ago. $2 million, with Vincent as the sole beneficiary. But what made Elena's blood freeze was the medical report attached to it. A psychological evaluation she'd never undergone, claiming she'd been showing signs of severe depression and suicidal ideation. I never saw this doctor, Elena said, her voice barely audible. I've never been suicidal in my life. Carmen grabbed Elena's arm. We need to leave. Now. If your husband is planning what I think he's planning. The sound of a car in the driveway cut her off. Elena's phone buzzed. A text from Vincent. Change of plans. Coming home now. Can't wait to see you. He knows, Elena whispered. Somehow he knows we're in here. Carmen was already moving, shoving files back into the cabinet. Can you get copies of these somehow? Elena pulled out her phone and started photographing pages as quickly as she could, her hands shaking so badly she had to retake several shots. The sound of Vincent's key in the front door echoed through the house. Elena! Vincent's voice called out, closer than it should be. He was moving through the house faster than usual. Elena shoved the last file into the cabinet, and Carmen locked it just as footsteps approached the office door. Elena grabbed a book from Vincent's shelf and opened it to a random page, trying to look casual. Vincent appeared in the doorway, his expression unreadable. What are you doing in here so late? Couldn't sleep, Elena said, proud that her voice came out steady. I was looking for something to read. Vincent's eyes moved between Elena and Carmen, who was standing by the window with a dust cloth in her hand. Carmen, I thought today was your day off. Mrs. Cross called me. She seemed lonely. Carmen's voice carried just the right amount of casual concern. I was just finishing up some cleaning. Vincent stepped into the room, and Elena caught the scent of unfamiliar perfume on his clothes. Sophia's perfume, she realized. He'd come directly from seeing the woman whose life was now in danger because of what she'd been telling the FBI. Find anything interesting to read? Vincent asked Elena, moving closer. Elena held up the book she'd grabbed. The Art of War by Sun Tzu. Vincent's expression shifted, became almost amused. Good choice, he said. Sun Tzu understood that the most important battles are won before they're ever fought, by knowing your enemy better than they know themselves. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. Was he threatening her, or was she reading too much into everything? I should let you two get some rest, Carmen said, moving toward the door. As she passed Elena, she squeezed her shoulder gently. Call me if you need anything, Mrs. Cross. Anything at all. After Carmen left, Vincent moved to his desk and opened his laptop. Elena watched him type in a password she'd never seen before, his fingers moving with practiced efficiency. Vincent, she said carefully, is everything okay? You seem tense. Just work stuff. Nothing for you to worry about. He glanced at her. Actually, there is something we should discuss. I've been thinking about our conversation about having children. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. What about it? I think we should take a break from trying. Focus on other things for a while. Vincent's voice was gentle, but Elena heard the steel underneath. I've made an appointment for you with a new doctor. Dr. Hendricks. He specializes in women's mental health. Elena's mouth went dry. Dr. Hendricks must be the doctor who'd written the fake psychological evaluation in her file. Mental health? Vincent, I don't understand. You've been under a lot of stress lately. The fertility treatments, the pressure to get pregnant. I think it's affecting you more than you realize. Vincent closed his laptop and stood up. Dr. Hendricks thinks some time away might help. A private facility where you can rest and recover. Elena felt the walls of the room closing in around her. Vincent was setting up her disappearance, making it look like a voluntary commitment for mental health treatment. Once she was locked away in a private facility, he could control every aspect of her life. Or end it. When is this appointment? She asked. Tomorrow afternoon. Right after my meeting with the lawyer. Elena's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Elena, this is Maya. I'm outside your house. We need to talk. It's about Vincent. Elena's blood went cold. Maya was supposed to be in Seattle for a work conference. Vincent's phone chimed at the same time. He glanced at it and his expression went dark. Who's texting you this late? Elena asked, fighting to keep her voice casual. Work emergency. I need to make some calls. Vincent was already moving toward the door. Why don't you head to bed? Tomorrow's going to be a big day. Elena nodded and headed toward the stairs, but instead of going up, she slipped out the front door. Maya's car was parked across the street, engine running. Elena ran to the passenger side and got in. Maya, what are you doing here? You're supposed to be in Seattle. Maya's face was pale in the dashboard light. Elena, I got a call from someone who said they had information about your husband. They told me to come here tonight, that your life was in danger. Who called you? Someone who said they'd been investigating Vincent for months. A federal agent. Maya grabbed Elena's hand. Elena, they know about the affairs, the money laundering, everything. But they also think Vincent is planning to hurt you. Elena's world spun. A federal agent? What was their name? Agent Reyes. David Reyes. Elena's heart stopped. That was the FBI agent Sophia had been feeding information to. The same agent whose investigation had put Sophia in mortal danger. Maya, we need to leave. Right now. What's wrong? Elena, you're scaring me. Elena looked back at the house where lights were moving from room to room as Vincent searched for her. In the space of one evening, she discovered her husband was a criminal, that he'd been planning her death, and that the FBI was closing in on him. But she'd also discovered something else. She was stronger than she'd ever imagined, and she was carrying a life that Vincent could never touch. Maya, Elena said, how fast can you drive? Why? Elena's phone buzzed with another text from Vincent. Where are you? We need to talk. Because, Elena said, I just declared war on one of the most dangerous men in the city, and I think he's figured out that I'm not the helpless victim he thought I was. Maya started the car. Where are we going? Elena thought about the files she'd photographed, the evidence of Vincent's crimes, and the federal agent who might be her only hope of survival. To find Agent Reyes, she said. Before Vincent finds us. Maya drove through the city, while Elena tried to reach Agent Reyes on the number Maya had been given. The phone rang endlessly before going to voicemail. Elena hung up and tried again, her anxiety mounting with each unanswered ring. He's not picking up, Elena said. Maya, where exactly did this agent tell you to meet him? Downtown. There's a 24-hour diner on 5th Street. He said he'd be there until midnight. Maya glanced at the dashboard clock, 11:47 p.m. We're cutting it close. Elena's phone buzzed with another text from Vincent. Elena, I know you're upset. Come home so we can talk this through like adults. Then another. I found Carmen in the parking lot. She's very concerned about you. Elena's blood went cold. Maya, call Carmen. Now. Maya handed Elena her phone while keeping her eyes on the road. Elena dialed Carmen's number with shaking fingers. It went straight to voicemail. He has her, Elena whispered. Vincent has Carmen. Are you sure? Maybe she just. Elena's phone rang. Vincent's number. Answer it, Maya said. Put it on speaker. Elena answered, her heart hammering. Vincent. Elena, sweetheart, where are you? Carmen is here with me, and she's very worried about your state of mind. Vincent's voice was calm, controlled. She told me about your conversation tonight. About the pregnancy test. Elena met Maya's eyes in the dashboard light. Vincent knew about the pregnancy. I think you need to come home so we can discuss this properly, Vincent continued. Carmen agrees that you're not thinking clearly right now. Let me talk to Carmen, Elena said. A pause, then Carmen's voice came through the phone, but something was wrong with it. Strained. Frightened. Mrs. Cross, please come home. Mr. Cross just wants to help you. Elena could hear the terror underneath Carmen's words, the careful way she was speaking. Vincent was making her say these things. Carmen, are you okay? I'm fine, Mijo. Just worried about you. You know how pregnancy hormones can affect judgment. Elena's breath caught. Carmen would never use that phrase. She was trying to tell Elena something. Then Elena understood. Carmen was warning her that Vincent knew about the pregnancy hormones, which meant he knew the baby was real. Which meant he knew it wasn't his. Vincent, Elena said carefully, I'll be home soon. Just let Carmen go. She doesn't need to be involved in this. Carmen is family, Elena. She's staying right here with me until you get home safely. The threat in Vincent's voice was unmistakable now. Don't do anything foolish. We both know how dangerous the city can be at night. Accidents happen so easily. Elena hung up and stared at Maya. He's going to kill her. He's going to kill Carmen because she helped me. Maya pulled into the diner parking lot. Through the windows, Elena could see a lone figure in a back booth. Is that him? Elena looked at the man sitting with his back to the wall, scanning the room like he expected trouble. He was younger than she'd imagined, maybe mid-30s, with dark hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. They walked into the diner, and the man looked up immediately. Elena Cross? Elena nodded. Agent Reyes? Sit down. We don't have much time. Reyes gestured to the booth across from him. His eyes moved to Maya. Who's your friend? Maya Chen. She's the one you called. Reyes frowned. I didn't call anyone named Maya Chen. Elena felt ice form in her stomach. What do you mean you didn't call her? I've never heard that name before in my life. Reyes pulled out his badge and showed it to Elena. I've been trying to reach you for weeks, but every time I call your house, your husband says you're unavailable. Maya had gone pale beside Elena. Someone called me tonight. They said they were Agent Reyes, that Elena was in danger, that I needed to bring her to this diner. Then someone's been monitoring our investigation. Reyes looked around the diner, suddenly alert. We need to leave. Now. Wait, Elena said. I have evidence. Photos of files from Vincent's office. She pulled out her phone and showed Reyes the pictures she'd taken. Money laundering, surveillance photos of me, a fake life insurance policy. Reyes studied the images, his expression growing darker. Jesus Christ. He's been planning this for months. He looked up at Elena. Mrs. Cross, your husband isn't just laundering money. He's been killing his business partners to keep them quiet. Elena's world tilted. Killing people? 3 men in the past year. All made to look like accidents or suicides. All of them knew about the money laundering operation. Reyes leaned forward. We've been using Sofia Martinez to gather evidence, but 3 days ago she disappeared. Elena remembered the file about Sofia being an FBI informant. Vincent knows about Sofia. I saw a report in his files recommending immediate action to neutralize the threat. Reyes cursed under his breath. If he knows about Sofia, then he knows we're closing in. He looked at Elena intently. Mrs. Cross, why did you finally decide to investigate your husband tonight? Elena hesitated, then pulled out the pregnancy test. I found out I'm pregnant, but Vincent had a vasectomy 3 years ago. Reyes stared at the test, understanding dawning in his expression. He's going to assume you've been having an affair. But I haven't. I've never. Elena stopped, a terrible realization washing over her. Oh God, the fertility doctor. Dr. Morrison. Vincent insisted I see her, insisted on all those tests and procedures. Maya grabbed Elena's arm. Elena, what are you thinking? Dr. Morrison used artificial insemination for some of the tests. She said it was to check my fallopian tubes, to see if there were any blockages. Elena's voice was barely a whisper. What if Vincent arranged for donor sperm to be used? What if he wanted me to get pregnant, so he could accuse me of cheating? Reyes was already pulling out his phone. That would give him grounds for divorce, and with the fake psychiatric evaluation, he could claim you were an unfit mother. He paused, processing the implications. But more than that, it would give him a reason to kill you in what would look like a crime of passion. Jealous husband discovers cheating wife. Elena felt the world spinning around her. Every detail of the past year suddenly made sense. Vincent's insistence on the fertility treatments, his enthusiasm about having a baby, his careful documentation of her supposed mental health issues. Maya's phone buzzed. She looked at it and went white. Elena, it's a text from the number that called me earlier. The one claiming to be Agent Reyes. What does it say? Elena asked. Maya showed her the screen. Package delivered. Payment due. Reyes stood up abruptly. We've been set up. Someone led you here deliberately. He looked around the diner, noting the exits. Mrs. Cross, who else knew you were investigating your husband tonight? Just Carmen. And she's... Elena stopped, a horrible thought occurring to her. Agent Reyes, how long have you been investigating Vincent? 8 months. Carmen found a receipt 6 months ago that made her suspicious. She's been helping me gather information. Elena's voice grew quiet. But what if she wasn't just helping me? What if she was reporting back to Vincent the whole time? The diner's bell chimed as the front door opened. Elena turned to see Carmen walking in, no longer the frightened woman from the phone call. Her expression was calm, determined, and behind her walked 2 men Elena had never seen before. "Hello, Mrs. Cross," Carmen said, sliding into the booth next to Elena, effectively trapping her. "Mr. Cross is very eager to see you." Elena stared at the woman she'd trusted with her deepest secrets, the woman she'd thought was her only ally. "Carmen, why?" "Because Mr. Cross has been very generous to my family. My son's medical school tuition, my daughter's wedding, my husband's heart surgery. All paid for by Mr. Cross, in exchange for making sure his wife didn't get into any trouble." Reyes had his hand moving toward his weapon, but one of the men behind Carmen shook his head slightly. "Agent Reyes, I wouldn't recommend it. This diner has excellent sight lines from the parking lot." Elena felt everything she'd believed about the past 3 years crumbling around her. Carmen hadn't been her friend. Maya's mysterious phone call had been a trap. Even her pregnancy, the one thing she'd thought was hers alone, had been orchestrated by Vincent. "How long?" Elena whispered to Carmen. "How long have you been reporting to him?" "Since the day he hired me. You were never supposed to be a real wife, Mijo. You were supposed to be a temporary solution to a public relations problem. Vincent needed to look stable and married for the IPO investors." Carmen's voice carried genuine sympathy. "But then you made the mistake of actually falling in love with him." Elena looked at Maya, who was sitting frozen beside her. "Maya, did you know?" Maya's silence was answer enough. "Maya." Elena's voice cracked. "Elena, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Tears were streaming down Maya's face. "Vincent approached me 2 years ago. He said you were having a breakdown, that he needed help keeping track of you for your own safety. He offered to pay off my student loans, help me get the promotion at work." Elena felt something die inside her chest. Everyone she'd trusted, everyone she'd loved, had been bought and paid for by her husband. Agent Reyes was still calculating his options when his phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his expression went completely dark. "What is it?" Elena asked. Reyes looked at her with something that might have been pity. "Mrs. Cross, I'm very sorry to tell you this, but there is no Agent David Reyes working for the FBI." Elena stared at him. "What do you mean?" "I mean," said the man she'd been calling Agent Reyes, "that I work for your husband. And this entire evening has been an elaborate test to see how far you'd go to betray him." Elena felt reality fracture around her. The man she'd thought was her salvation was another of Vincent's employees. The evidence she'd gathered was probably planted for her to find. The pregnancy might be the only real thing in her entire life. "The baby," she whispered. "Is the baby real?" Carmen reached over and squeezed her hand with what seemed like genuine affection. "Yes, Mijo. The baby is real. And Mr. Cross is very much looking forward to meeting his child." Elena's mind reeled. "But the vasectomy?" "Reversible," the fake Agent Reyes said. "Your husband had it reversed 6 months ago. He wanted to make sure any child you carried would actually be his." Elena looked around the table at the faces of people she'd trusted, people who'd been orchestrating her destruction for years. But underneath the devastation, she felt something else stirring. Something cold and sharp and absolutely furious. Vincent had been playing a game with her life, but he'd made one crucial mistake. He'd assumed that breaking her spirit would break her completely. He was about to learn the difference between a woman who's been beaten down and a woman who's been underestimated. "Carmen," Elena said quietly, "when you report back to Vincent tonight, I want you to give him a message." "What message, Mijo?" Elena looked directly into Carmen's eyes, letting her see the steel that Vincent had never bothered to look for. "Tell him the game is over. And tell him that he has no idea who he's been married to." The drive back to the house felt like a funeral procession. Elena sat in the back seat between Carmen and Maya, watching the city lights blur past the window. The fake Agent Reyes drove while one of Vincent's men rode shotgun, both of them casual and professional, like they transported broken wives every night. Elena's mind was racing, trying to process the complete destruction of everything she'd believed about her life. Every friendship, every moment of kindness, every person she'd trusted, all of it had been purchased by Vincent. She was a bird in a cage who'd never even realized the bars were there. But underneath the devastation, something else was growing. A cold, calculating fury that Vincent had never seen because he'd never bothered to look. The house was blazing with lights when they pulled into the driveway. Vincent stood in the doorway, silhouetted against the warm glow of their entrance hall. To anyone passing by, it would look like a concerned husband waiting for his wife to come home. Elena walked up the front steps on unsteady legs, flanked by the people who'd betrayed her. Vincent's smile was warm and relieved, the perfect performance of a man whose beloved wife had finally returned safe. "Elena, sweetheart," he said, pulling her into an embrace that felt like a coffin closing. "I was so worried about you." Inside the house, Vincent dismissed Carmen and the others with a nod. Maya lingered at the door, tears still streaming down her face. "Elena, I'm sorry," Maya whispered. "I never meant for it to go this far." Elena looked at her former best friend with something that might have been pity. "Maya, you sold our friendship for student loan payments and a job promotion. The only thing you should be sorry about is that you sold yourself so cheaply." After Maya left, Vincent led Elena to the living room and poured himself a glass of whiskey. He didn't offer her one. "So," he said, settling into his leather chair like a king on his throne, "how much do you know?" Elena remained standing, her hand unconsciously moving to her stomach. "Everything. The money laundering, the surveillance, the fake psychiatric evaluation. The fact that you've been planning my murder for months." Vincent's eyebrows rose. "Murder? Elena, that's quite an accusation. The life insurance policy. The fake mental health records. The private investigator's recommendation to neutralize the threat." Elena's voice was steady, controlled. "Did you really think I was too stupid to figure it out?" "I think," Vincent said carefully, "that you've been under a lot of stress lately. Pregnancy can affect a woman's judgment in unexpected ways." There it was. Vincent's acknowledgement that he knew about the pregnancy, knew it was his, knew she'd never cheated on him. The fertility treatments, the artificial insemination, the carefully orchestrated timeline. All of it designed to make her believe she was broken while he prepared for the perfect moment to destroy her. "Why?" Elena asked. "Why go through all of this? If you wanted a divorce, you could have just asked for one." Vincent swirled his whiskey, considering his answer. "Do you remember what you said to me the night I proposed? You said you'd love me whether I was rich or poor, successful or struggling. You said you'd never leave me no matter what." Elena remembered. She'd meant every word. "I believed you," Vincent continued. "And that scared me more than anything else in my life. Because I knew that eventually, you'd discover who I really am. And I knew that when you did, you'd try to leave. So you made sure I couldn't. I made sure you wouldn't want to." Vincent stood and moved to the window, looking out at the perfectly manicured lawn. "Every friend you had, every person you trusted, every source of support in your life, I bought them all. Not because I'm cruel, Elena, but because I love you too much to let you go." Elena stared at him. "Vincent, that's not love. That's possession. Is there a difference?" Vincent turned back to her, and for the first time, Elena saw something genuine in his expression. Something desperate and hungry and completely insane. "I built an empire for you, Elena. Everything I did, every law I broke, every person I eliminated, it was all to create a life worthy of you. You killed people. I removed obstacles." Vincent's voice was matter of fact. Marcus Klein was going to expose the money laundering operation. David Peterson was threatening to go to the FBI. Thomas Mitchell was having second thoughts about our arrangement. He shrugged. They made their choices. Elena felt sick. And Sophia? What choice did she make? Vincent's expression darkened. Sophia made the choice to betray me. To pretend to love me while feeding information to federal agents. He paused. She's no longer a problem. The casual way he said it made Elena's blood freeze. You killed her. I solved a problem. Just like I'm going to solve the problem of your sudden rebellious streak. Elena backed toward the door, but Vincent was already moving to block her path. Vincent, let me leave. Just let me take the baby and go. You can tell everyone I had a breakdown, that I left voluntarily. You'll be free to live your life however you want. Vincent laughed, a sound devoid of any warmth. Elena, you still don't understand. I don't want to be free of you. I want you to understand that you belong to me completely. He pulled out his phone and showed her the screen. It was a live video feed from what looked like a warehouse somewhere in the city. In the center of the frame, tied to a chair, was Dr. Morrison. Elena's knees went weak. Vincent, what have you done? Dr. Morrison has been very helpful over the past year. The fertility treatments, the artificial insemination procedures, the careful timing of your pregnancy. She's been an invaluable partner. Vincent's thumb hovered over the phone screen. But partners who know too much eventually become liabilities. Elena watched Dr. Morrison struggling against her restraints, her eyes wide with terror above the tape covering her mouth. What do you want? Elena whispered. I want you to choose, Vincent said. You can cooperate with me completely, be the perfect wife, raise our child, never question my decisions again, and Dr. Morrison lives. She retires quietly to another state, receives a generous pension, and never speaks of our arrangement. Elena's heart was hammering. And if I don't cooperate? Vincent's thumb moved closer to the screen. Then Dr. Morrison becomes another tragic victim of random city violence. And you get to live with the knowledge that your defiance killed an innocent woman. Elena stared at the video feed, watching Dr. Morrison's terrified eyes. The woman who'd helped Vincent manipulate Elena's body and mind, but who was still a human being. Still someone's daughter, someone's friend. You're a monster, Elena breathed. I'm a man who gets what he wants. Vincent pocketed his phone. And what I want is my wife to understand her place in this marriage. Elena felt the walls closing in around her. If she submitted to Vincent's demands, she'd be condemning herself and her child to a lifetime of psychological torture. But if she refused, an innocent woman would die because of her defiance. I need time to think, Elena said. You have until tomorrow night. Dr. Morrison's situation is time-sensitive. Vincent moved closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. But Elena, before you make your decision, there's something else you should know. Elena's stomach clenched. What? The baby you're carrying? The one you think is your ace in the hole, your bargaining chip for independence. Vincent's smile was predatory. I've already spoken to my lawyers. If anything happens to me, if I die under suspicious circumstances, if I disappear, there are sealed instructions to be opened immediately. What kind of instructions? Instructions that will ensure our child is raised by my business partners. People who share my perspective on family loyalty. Vincent touched Elena's cheek with false tenderness. So you see, sweetheart, even if you somehow managed to destroy me, you'd be destroying our child's future too. Elena jerked away from his touch. You're threatening your own baby? I'm protecting my legacy. Our child will be raised to understand the value of loyalty, commitment, and family honor. Whether you're around to see it or not. Elena felt something break inside her chest. Not her spirit, Vincent had miscalculated there. But something else. The last vestige of the woman who'd believed in fairness, who'd believed that love could conquer all, who'd believed that good people were ultimately rewarded for their goodness. That woman was gone. And in her place stood someone Vincent had never met before. Vincent, Elena said quietly, you've made a terrible mistake. What mistake is that, sweetheart? Elena looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time in 3 years. She saw the desperation beneath his control, the fear beneath his arrogance, the fundamental weakness of a man who could only hold on to love through force. You've assumed that because you broke down the woman I was, I couldn't become someone you've never seen before. Vincent's smile faltered slightly. Elena, you're exhausted. You're not thinking clearly. Elena moved toward the stairs, her hand trailing along the banister she'd gripped so many times before in fear and confusion. But tonight, it felt different under her palm. Tonight, it felt like the solid foundation she was going to use to tear down everything Vincent had built. I'm thinking more clearly than I have in 3 years, she said. And tomorrow night, when I give you my decision, you're going to learn the difference between a woman who's been beaten down and a woman who's been awakened. Elena walked up the stairs to their bedroom, leaving Vincent standing alone in the living room with his whiskey and his threats and his complete misunderstanding of what he'd just unleashed. In their bedroom, Elena locked the door and sat on the edge of the bed, her hands pressed against her still flat stomach. She thought about the life growing inside her, the child who would either be raised by a monster or by people even worse than Vincent. Unless she found a third option. Elena pulled out her phone and deleted every contact, every message, every trace of the people who'd betrayed her. Then she opened a new note and began to write. She had 24 hours to save Dr. Morrison's life, protect her unborn child, and destroy the most dangerous man she'd ever known. But for the first time in 3 years, Elena Cross knew exactly who she was and what she was capable of. And Vincent was about to discover that the most dangerous enemy is the one you've underestimated for too long. Elena spent the night in their bedroom, but she didn't sleep. Instead, she methodically went through every detail of her life with Vincent, looking for the patterns she'd been too trusting to see before. By dawn, she had a plan that terrified and exhilarated her in equal measure. The plan required her to become someone she'd never been before, someone willing to sacrifice everything, including her own safety, for the chance to save both Dr. Morrison and her child. Vincent knocked on the bedroom door at 8 a.m., his voice carefully modulated to sound concerned rather than threatening. "Elena, I've made breakfast. We should talk." Elena opened the door, and Vincent's expression shifted when he saw her. She'd showered, dressed in a simple blue dress he'd once said made her look beautiful, and styled her hair the way she'd worn it when they first met. But something in her eyes was different. Something Vincent had never seen before. "You look lovely," he said, but there was uncertainty in his voice. "Thank you," Elena replied. "Shall we eat?" Downstairs, Vincent had indeed made breakfast: eggs Benedict, fresh fruit, coffee. The same meal he'd made the morning after he'd first stayed over at her apartment 4 years ago. Elena recognized the gesture for what it was: an attempt to remind her of happier times, to make her nostalgic for the version of their relationship that had existed before she'd learned the truth. They ate in relative silence, Vincent occasionally making small talk about the weather or asking if she needed anything. Elena responded politely, playing the role of the compliant wife while her mind raced through the details of what she had to do. "Elena," Vincent said finally, setting down his coffee cup, "have you made your decision about Dr. Morrison?" Elena met his eyes across the table. "I have some questions first." "Of course. The 3 men you killed, Marcus, David, and Thomas. Did they have families?" Vincent's jaw tightened. "Elena, I don't see how that's relevant." "It's relevant because I want to understand the full scope of what you're capable of." Elena's voice was calm, conversational. "Did they have children?" Marcus had 2 daughters. David was divorced, no kids. Thomas had a son. Vincent's tone suggested he found these details tedious. "Elena, these men made choices that threatened everything we've built together." "And Sophia? Did she have family?" "A sister in Phoenix. Parents who'd already disowned her for her lifestyle choices." Vincent leaned back in his chair. "Elena, why are you asking these questions?" Elena stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the garden where she'd spent so many afternoons reading, believing she was living a peaceful life with a man who loved her. "I'm asking because I want to understand how you justify taking away everything these people valued most." She turned back to Vincent. "Their lives, their futures, their relationships with the people they loved. I justified it by protecting what I value most." Vincent's voice was getting harder. "You. Our life together. Our future." Elena nodded slowly. "And that's exactly why you're going to lose everything." Vincent went very still. "What do you mean? You think love means possession. You think protecting someone means controlling every aspect of their existence. You think loyalty can be bought and maintained through fear." Elena moved closer to the table, her voice steady and clear. "But you've never understood what real love actually requires." "Elena, you're upset. You're not thinking." "I'm thinking more clearly than I ever have." Elena pulled out her phone and set it on the table between them. "Vincent, I want you to call whoever has Dr. Morrison and tell them to let her go." Vincent laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Elena, we've been through this. Dr. Morrison's safety depends on your cooperation." "No," Elena said quietly. "Dr. Morrison's safety depends on whether you want to spend the rest of your life in federal prison." Vincent's expression changed, became dangerous. "What are you talking about?" Elena touched her phone screen, and Agent David Reyes's voice filled the room. The real Agent David Reyes, not the fake one from the diner. "Mrs. Cross, thank you for calling. Are you in a safe location to talk?" Vincent lunged for the phone, but Elena was faster. She'd been expecting his reaction. "Agent Reyes," Elena said, stepping away from Vincent. "I'm here with my husband. He'd like to hear what you have to say about Sofia Martinez." Vincent's face went white. Agent Reyes's voice continued from the phone. "Mrs. Cross, I'm pleased to tell you that Agent Martinez is alive and well. The attempt on her life last week failed, and she's currently in federal protection. She's provided us with extensive evidence of your husband's criminal activities." Elena watched Vincent's world crumble in real time. "You see, Vincent, while you were busy orchestrating elaborate psychological games, Sophia was smarter than both of us. She faked her own death to make you think you'd eliminated the threat." Vincent was backing toward the kitchen door, But Elena could see him calculating his options and finding them all blocked. The man you've been calling Agent Reyes? He's actually one of Sophia's contacts, helping us gather evidence about your operation. Elena's voice remained calm as Vincent's control completely dissolved. Every conversation we had last night was recorded. Every threat you made against Dr. Morrison, every admission about the murders, every detail about the money laundering, all of it is now in federal hands. Vincent's hand moved toward a knife block on the counter, but Elena had anticipated this too. Vincent, don't make this worse than it already is. The house is surrounded. Agent Reyes and his team have been listening to everything since I called them at 6 this morning. Vincent spun around to look out the kitchen window, and Elena could see him registering the black SUVs that had appeared in their neighborhood sometime during breakfast. You set me up, Vincent said, his voice filled with something between admiration and rage. No, Elena corrected. I gave you exactly what you've always given me, a choice between terrible options. The difference is, I'm giving you the chance to choose redemption. Vincent turned back to her, and for the first time in 3 years, Elena saw him clearly. Not as the powerful man who controlled every aspect of her life, but as the fundamentally weak person who needed to control others because he couldn't control himself. What do you want? Vincent asked. I want you to call whoever has Dr. Morrison and tell them to release her immediately. I want you to surrender to Agent Reyes voluntarily. And I want you to provide full cooperation with the federal investigation. And in exchange? Elena's hand moved to her stomach, and she saw Vincent's eyes follow the gesture. In exchange, I won't tell our child that their father was a murderer who threatened to sell them to criminals if he didn't get his way. Vincent stared at her for a long moment, and Elena could see him weighing his options. He could try to fight, try to run, try to negotiate, but they both knew he'd already lost. The front door opened, and Agent Reyes entered with 2 other federal agents. Elena had unlocked it for them when she'd made her call that morning. Mr. Cross, Agent Reyes said, we have warrants for your arrest on charges of money laundering, conspiracy, and 3 counts of murder. You have the right to remain silent. Vincent held up his hand. Agent Reyes, I'd like to make a phone call first. To arrange for the release of Dr. Morrison. Elena felt something loosen in her chest, relief, exhaustion, and something else. Pride. Not in what she'd destroyed, but in what she'd saved. Vincent made the call, his voice hollow as he instructed someone to release the package unharmed. Then he held out his hands for the handcuffs. As Agent Reyes read Vincent his rights, Vincent looked at Elena one last time. Elena, he said quietly, I did love you. In the only way I knew how. Elena looked at the man she'd been married to for 3 years, the man who'd systematically destroyed her sense of reality, the man who'd killed 3 people and threatened countless others. And she felt something she hadn't expected. Pity. Vincent, she said, that was never love. That was fear disguised as love. Real love would have trusted me to choose you freely. Vincent was led away in handcuffs, and Elena stood alone in the kitchen where she'd eaten 1,000 meals as Vincent's wife. But for the first time, she wasn't really alone. She had herself, fully and completely, maybe for the first time in her adult life. Agent Reyes approached her carefully. Mrs. Cross, are you all right? Elena thought about the question. Was she all right? She was pregnant, alone, and facing an uncertain future. Her marriage was over, her husband was a criminal, and everyone she'd trusted had betrayed her. But she was also free. Free to make her own choices, trust her own judgment, and build a life based on truth rather than manipulation. Agent Reyes, Elena said, I'm going to be better than all right. I'm going to be myself again. And for the first time in 3 years, Elena Cross smiled because she wanted to, not because someone expected her to. 3 hours later, Elena sat in a federal building conference room, watching through one-way glass as Vincent gave his full confession to Agent Reyes. His voice was flat, mechanical, as he detailed 3 years of crimes that had destroyed multiple lives. But Elena wasn't focused on Vincent anymore. She was watching Dr. Morrison, who sat beside her, very much alive and remarkably composed for someone who'd been held hostage for 12 hours. Mrs. Cross, Dr. Morrison said quietly, there's something you need to know about your pregnancy. Elena turned to face the woman who'd helped orchestrate her psychological manipulation. Dr. Morrison, I know Vincent forced you to participate in his scheme. You don't need to. No, Dr. Morrison interrupted. You don't understand. I wasn't forced to do anything. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. What do you mean? Dr. Morrison opened a thick folder she'd been carrying. Mrs. Cross, I've been an FBI informant for 2 years. Everything I did during your fertility treatments was designed to build evidence against your husband. Elena stared at her. You were working with the FBI? But Vincent said you were his partner. Vincent believed I was his partner because that's what I wanted him to believe. Dr. Morrison pulled out medical records Elena had never seen before. Every procedure I performed on you was legitimate medical care. But I also documented every request Vincent made, every manipulation he attempted, every time he tried to control your reproductive choices. Elena's mind reeled. The artificial insemination was exactly what I told you it was. A test to check for fallopian tube blockages. Vincent asked me to use donor sperm to impregnate you without your knowledge, but I refused and reported the request to the FBI immediately. Dr. Morrison's voice was gentle but firm. Mrs. Cross, the baby you're carrying was conceived naturally. Your husband's vasectomy was reversed, just as he told you, but he did it because he genuinely wanted a child with you. Elena felt the room spinning around her. Then why did he let me believe I might have been unfaithful? Because he wanted to maintain psychological control over you. As long as you believed you might have cheated, you'd be grateful for his forgiveness and less likely to question his other behaviors. Dr. Morrison leaned forward. Mrs. Cross, your husband is a master manipulator, but his greatest weakness is his need to overcomplicate everything. He created elaborate schemes when simple honesty would have been more effective. Agent Reyes entered the conference room, carrying a box of files. Mrs. Cross, we've completed Mr. Cross's initial debriefing. There's something else you should know. Elena looked up at him, wondering what other revelations were coming. Your husband's criminal organization was much larger than we initially realized. The money laundering operation involved 12 other companies and at least 30 individuals. Agent Reyes set the box on the table. But more importantly, your actions today didn't just save Dr. Morrison. They saved at least 6 other people who were being held as leverage against their family members. Elena's breath caught. Other people? Marcus Klein's daughters were being threatened to keep his widow quiet about his murder. David Peterson's ex-wife was under surveillance. Thomas Mitchell's son was being stalked. Agent Reyes opened the box and pulled out photographs. Your husband used intimidation against family members as his primary method of control. When you forced him to surrender, you freed all of them. Elena stared at the photos of people she'd never met, people whose lives had been trapped in Vincent's web of control and fear. Children who could now grow up without looking over their shoulders. Women who could finally speak the truth about what had happened to their loved ones. There's something else, Dr. Morrison said softly. Mrs. Cross, when did you first suspect that your husband was manipulating your fertility treatments? Elena thought back to the timeline. Yesterday, when I found the medical records showing his vasectomy. But something felt wrong even before that. The way he insisted on specific procedures, specific timing. Dr. Morrison nodded. And when did you start documenting his behavior? Elena paused. I haven't been documenting anything. I only started investigating yesterday. Dr. Morrison and Agent Reyes exchanged a look. Mrs. Cross, Agent Reyes said carefully, we have recordings of phone calls you made to our tip line starting 8 months ago. Calls reporting suspicious financial activity, concerns about your husband's business associates, questions about whether certain behaviors constituted domestic abuse. Elena felt the world tilt beneath her. That's impossible. I never called the FBI. Dr. Morrison opened another file. Mrs. Cross, do you remember our first appointment? When I asked you about your stress levels, your sleep patterns, your relationship with your husband. Yes, but. And do you remember what you told me about your dreams? The nightmares where you were trying to call for help but couldn't speak. Elena remembered. She'd been having those dreams for months. Dreams where she was screaming warnings that no one could hear. Mrs. Cross, Dr. Morrison said gently, those weren't just dreams. You've been calling our tip line in your sleep for 8 months. Sleep-talking detailed reports about your husband's activities, his threats, his behavioral patterns. Elena stared at her in disbelief. I was calling the FBI in my sleep? Your subconscious mind was trying to save you long before your conscious mind was ready to accept the truth, Agent Reyes explained. The recordings are quite detailed. You reported specific dates, names, even described the location of files in your husband's office. Elena felt tears streaming down her face, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of awe at the realization that some part of her had been fighting back all along, even when she thought she was completely powerless. The pregnancy, Elena whispered. When did I first call about the pregnancy? Dr. Morrison checked her notes. 3 weeks ago. You called at 2:47 a.m. and reported that you were pregnant, but that your husband didn't know yet. You said you were afraid he would use the baby to control you. Elena remembered that night. She'd woken up with a vague sense of anxiety, a feeling that she'd forgotten something important. She'd assumed it was just pregnancy hormones. Agent Reyes leaned back in his chair. Mrs. Cross, your subconscious mind has been building a case against your husband for 8 months. When you consciously decided to investigate him yesterday, you weren't starting from zero. You were accessing information your sleeping mind had already gathered and reported. Elena thought about Carmen, about Maya, about all the people who'd betrayed her trust. But she also thought about the part of herself that had never stopped fighting, never stopped trying to save not just herself, but other people she didn't even know were in danger. Agent Reyes, Elena said slowly, what happens now? Now, your husband goes to prison for the rest of his life. His associates are arrested. His victims get justice and their lives back. Agent Reyes smiled. And you get to raise your child in freedom, knowing that you saved not just yourself but an entire network of people who were trapped in your husband's system of control. Elena stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city where she'd lived as Vincent's wife for 3 years. But now she saw it differently. Not as a place where she'd been trapped, but as a place where she'd fought back and won. Dr. Morrison, Elena said without turning around, when you deliver my baby, I want you to tell them something. What's that, Mrs. Cross? Elena turned back to face the room, and both Dr. Morrison and Agent Reyes could see the transformation that had taken place. The frightened, manipulated woman who'd entered the federal building that morning was gone. In her place stood someone new. Someone who'd discovered that the strongest part of herself had been fighting all along. Tell them that their mother was stronger than she ever knew, and that strength runs in their blood. Elena walked out of the federal building and into the afternoon sunlight, carrying a life that would grow up free from the shadows that had nearly consumed her. Behind her, the machinery of justice ground into motion, dismantling the empire built on lies and fear. But ahead of her lay something Vincent had never been able to buy, steal, or control. A future built on truth, chosen freely, and defended fiercely by the woman she'd always been underneath. The woman who'd been saving herself, one unconscious phone call at a time, until she was finally ready to save everyone else too. 6 months later, Elena Cross stood in the bathroom of her new apartment, holding a pregnancy test in her trembling hands. But this time, the 2 pink lines brought only joy, not confusion or fear. This time, she knew exactly what they meant and exactly what she was going to do about it. The apartment was small, nothing like the mansion she'd shared with Vincent, but every inch of it belonged to her. She'd chosen the paint colors, the furniture, the view of the park where children played under their parents' watchful eyes. Most importantly, she'd chosen to live here freely, without surveillance cameras or hidden agendas, or people reporting her every move to someone else. The doorbell rang, and Elena smiled as she opened it to find Dr. Morrison carrying a medical bag and a bottle of sparkling apple cider. How are we feeling today, Mom? Dr. Morrison asked, giving Elena a hug that was genuinely warm rather than professionally distant. We're feeling grateful, Elena replied, leading her into the living room where sunlight streamed through windows she'd chosen herself. Dr. Morrison had become more than Elena's doctor over the past 6 months. She'd become a friend, a mentor, and living proof that it was possible to fight back against systems of control and win. After Vincent's arrest, Dr. Morrison had left her practice at the fertility clinic and opened a women's health center focused on helping victims of domestic abuse and reproductive coercion. Any word from Agent Reyes? Dr. Morrison asked as she set up her portable ultrasound equipment. Vincent was sentenced yesterday. Life without parole, plus 45 years. Elena settled onto the couch, her hand resting on her now visible pregnancy bump. Marcus Klein's daughters were in the courtroom. They wanted to thank me, but I told them we thanked each other. Dr. Morrison nodded as she prepared the ultrasound gel. And how do you feel about the sentencing? Elena considered the question. Relieved. Sad. Angry that it took so long for justice to catch up with him. She paused. But mostly I feel free. Vincent spent 3 years trying to convince me that I was weak, that I needed him to survive. The sentence proves that the opposite was true. He needed to control me because he knew that if I ever realized my own strength, his whole world would crumble. The ultrasound screen flickered to life, showing the tiny form of Elena's daughter moving gently in the womb. Elena's breath caught, as it did every time she saw her child. "She's beautiful," Dr. Morrison said softly. "Strong heartbeat, perfect development. She's going to be a fighter, just like her mother." Elena watched her daughter on the screen and thought about the future she was building for both of them. She'd started a nonprofit organization, helping other women escape situations of domestic abuse and financial control. She'd gone back to school to finish her degree in social work. She'd learned to trust her own judgment again, slowly and carefully, one decision at a time. Most importantly, she'd learned the difference between being loved and being possessed. "Dr. Morrison," Elena said, "do you think she'll ever ask about her father?" "Probably, when she's old enough to understand complex moral questions." Dr. Morrison turned off the ultrasound machine and handed Elena a towel. "What will you tell her?" Elena had thought about this question many times over the past 6 months. "I'll tell her the truth. That her father was a man who confused love with control, who hurt people because he was afraid of losing them. But I'll also tell her that she comes from strength on both sides, because even her father's strength, twisted as it was, came from somewhere real." Elena stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the park where she planned to teach her daughter to swing and slide and climb. "I'll tell her that the most important thing isn't where you come from, but what you choose to do with the strength you inherit." Dr. Morrison packed up her equipment, but she didn't seem in a hurry to leave. "Elena, can I ask you something personal?" "Of course. Do you ever regret the way things ended? Not with Vincent specifically, but do you ever wish you could have saved your marriage instead of destroying it?" Elena turned back from the window, and Dr. Morrison could see the woman she'd become over the past 6 months. Stronger, clearer, more confident in her own worth. "Dr. Morrison, I didn't destroy my marriage. I discovered that my marriage was already destroyed, that it had been built on lies from the very beginning." Elena's voice was steady and sure. "What I destroyed was the illusion that control and love are the same thing. What I destroyed was the idea that I should be grateful for crumbs when I deserved a feast." Elena moved to a bookshelf and pulled out a photo album she'd been creating. Pictures of her new life, her new friends, the women she'd helped through her nonprofit work. "Vincent thought he was building something permanent by controlling every aspect of my life. But you can't build real love on a foundation of fear and manipulation. Real love requires trust, respect, and the freedom to choose." Elena opened the album to a picture of herself speaking at a conference for domestic abuse survivors. "What I've built since leaving Vincent is something he could never create. Relationships based on truth." Dr. Morrison looked through the photos, seeing Elena surrounded by women who were learning to rebuild their lives. Children who were growing up free from the cycles of abuse that had trapped their mothers. "You know what the most beautiful part is?" Elena said, closing the album. "Vincent thought he was teaching me that I was powerless. But what he actually taught me was that I had so much power, he needed an entire network of people to keep me contained." Elena's phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it and smiled. "What is it?" Dr. Morrison asked. "It's from Sarah Chun, Maya's sister. She's applying to law school and wants to specialize in domestic abuse cases." Elena showed Dr. Morrison the message. She said talking to me made her realize she wanted to spend her life helping women fight back against men like Vincent. Dr. Morrison gathered her things, but she paused at the door. "Elena, what do you want for your daughter's future?" Elena looked around the apartment she'd built for herself, thought about the nonprofit she'd created from nothing, considered the network of strong women who'd become her chosen family. "I want her to grow up knowing that love doesn't require losing yourself. I want her to understand that real strength comes from lifting others up, not tearing them down. And I want her to know that if someone ever tries to make her feel small, she comes from a long line of women who refuse to be diminished." Elena placed her hand on her stomach, feeling her daughter's strong kicks against her palm. "Most of all, I want her to know that the woman she becomes is entirely her choice to make." After Dr. Morrison left, Elena sat in the nursery she'd painted herself, soft yellow walls with white clouds, because she wanted her daughter to grow up surrounded by light and possibility. On the dresser sat the first pregnancy test she'd taken 6 months ago, the one that had started her journey toward the truth. Elena picked up the test and thought about the woman who'd held it that night, confused and frightened and completely unaware of her own strength. That woman had saved herself and countless others by refusing to accept a life built on lies. Elena placed the test in a memory box she was creating for her daughter, next to newspaper clippings about Vincent's conviction and photos of the women who'd found freedom because Elena had found the courage to fight back. Someday, when her daughter was old enough to understand, Elena would open this box and tell her the story of how love, real love, had conquered fear, manipulation, and control. But for now, Elena simply sat in the nursery, feeling her daughter move inside her, building a future where both of them would be free to become exactly who they were meant to be. Outside her window, the sun was setting over the city where she'd once been trapped and where she now lived as a free woman. Inside her heart, Elena felt the deep satisfaction that comes from discovering you're stronger than you ever imagined. The woman Vincent had tried to control no longer existed. In her place stood someone new, a mother, a survivor, a fighter, and proof that the human spirit cannot be permanently caged by anyone who mistakes fear for love. Elena Cross had learned the most important lesson of her life: that sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to accept anything less than genuine love in return.